So today we're going to go over how to export a PowerApp from one environment, one tenant, to another tenant. This can be very helpful if you've developed an application and you want to share it with others that are outside of your tenant. It can be very helpful just for you to kind of realize what needs to be done in the event that you need to restore a PowerApp. Of course, there's version control within PowerApps, but if you feel like you need to save and restore, this may be helpful as well. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right to this, and we're going to actually walk down this manual that I've created as a reference guide for you. So this is a cookbook, and we're going to walk through every step. So again, we're going to move from one tenant to another. So the first thing that we want to do here is we want to go and annotate what lists are currently in our PowerApp, and we do that by opening up PowerApps, of course, selecting the data symbol there, and just taking note. A lot of times I just do screenshots of everything so that I have everything in one place. Then once we know that, we're going to go over to the SharePoint site itself and find that content and export those lists. Now, the lists, the data isn't as important perhaps in the new tenant, but the list and the way the list is configured is very important. So here we're just going to go, we're going to open up the SharePoint site that the lists reside. We're going to click on Documents there. Then we're going to go up to the gear, click on Site Contents. When we get into Site Contents, we're going to see all of the contents and lists listed out, and we're going to find the one that we want and begin to export it. And we do that just by simply clicking on Export. We found the list and we export to CSV. Now we'll want to document all of the fields. So before we go anywhere, here we're within Settings, we can see all of the site and list contents. We want to make sure that we're right here. So for example, this is a list name. I'm going to click on the three dots here. I'm going to say Settings. And then I'm going to annotate all of the fields. Now again, I'm going to do this through a screenshot so that I have all this information, because this information right here is going to become critical when you dump it into your target environment as you create and import those lists. Now, of course, you can just take, if the list is small, just create it natively in the new environment, but name it the same thing, because when the app comes in, it's going to want to see this, and it's hard-coded to reference these data sets. So make sure you do that. Then here we want to, if there's any calculated fields, notice here it says calculated field. Here we want to document what those are. Okay? Now remember, I'm going through this as part of transferring to another environment, but this is just good hygiene. Once you get done developing an application, it's always good to create this documentation, because you never know what could happen and that you might have to restore, and you don't want to have to sit there and figure out what these calculated fields are. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead, now that that's done, we're going to look to see if there's any flows. Now I will tell you that most of the time flows do not transfer well inside of PowerApps. You may have to recreate them or disconnect, and I'm going to walk you through here on the next several steps on kind of how to do that and what happens when it doesn't work, so you can fix that. But here, let's just look, see what we've got. We're still inside of PowerApps here. We're going to click on the flow button there, and we're going to see, oh, there is a flow inside of our app. So we can go and export that. So we can open up Power Automate here, and we can find the flow itself, click on the three dots there, click on Export, and then export the package as a zip. This works some of the time, some of the times it doesn't. I always, again, just export what the script, the flow actually looks like, especially if I'm going to be transferring from an environment that I may not have access to troubleshoot when I get the application up and running. I want to make sure I document it very well. So here I've just taken screenshots of this flow, and I'm just going to cruise through here. You can pause the video and see this actual flow is a calculation flow. It does a great job for calculations, by the way. And you can see I've also annotated inside a flow. These are notes. If you click on here, you'll see notes. Click on notes and you can add this text. And I always, by habit, at least try to always add the note there. And sometimes I'll even put where the output is from. Now, inside a flow, if you hold your mouse over it, you're going to see where it comes from. But in this documentation, I don't know because I can't do that. So I always like to annotate things just because it makes it easier. I don't forget. Here also, as an example of that annotation, here I'm getting items from get items number 2. Which isn't on the screen, but that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so I see the value, I annotate what it is. Again, where the output's from, it's from the sum statement. Okay, and just kind of go down through there. Okay, so now we're ready to export the PowerApp itself. So let's go ahead and go and open up PowerApps, and you're going to find the application that you want to export. You're going to click, there's 3 dots next to the application. I have a screenshot somewhere in here. But you're just going to click on those 3 dots and select export. Actually, I'm sorry. You're going to open up PowerApps, and when PowerApps is open, you're going to see at the very top of the screen the opportunity to export the application as a package. You're going to do that, and then you can modify what it looks like as it imports into the new environment. Note here that I've created the task name and I have this gear here that says what's going on in the environment, right? And so here I want to create this as new and save it. And if I need to make any other adjustments, I can click on the gear, and then when it imports, right, I'm exporting now, but when it imports, it will import into those settings. Then I just click on export. Now notice that we have other resources, related resources here. We have a flow and SharePoint. We're going to talk about those a little later because they're not going to work correctly in this example. But it's good so that you can see how it doesn't create correctly. Okay, so here we're going to copy all files to the new tenant. Those are all the spreadsheets that you've created. We're going to open on the new tenant. We're going to open up those lists that we exported up top here. We exported those lists as CSV files. We're going to open those as, we're going to go ahead and open those in Excel. And we're going to open up Excel, excuse me, and we're going to drag those CSV files right onto Excel. So just literally take them from here and drag and drop them onto Excel. It's going to ask you, because it sees that it's a CSV file, it's going to ask you, hey, what do you want to do with this? Well, I want to save this as an Excel workbook is what I want to do. I want to save that as an Excel workbook. When you get the spreadsheet up, because remember, we're going to create the new list from this spreadsheet. So we need to get this spreadsheet where we want it. Now we can delete data if we want. A lot of times I leave the data in so that I can test the application a little easier, but whatever works for you. Then we're going to highlight all the fields in the table. Now here I'm just a little misleading. I'm just highlighting the top, but if there was data, I'd be highlighting it as well. And then I'm going to go, then I'm going to go here, I'm on the home, I'm going to say format as table, and then hit white. Now what that's going to do is it's going to format all of my spreadsheets, right? All these spreadsheets as their CSV files. I'm going to convert to an Excel file, and then I'm going to convert them all to tables. So you got to do that for every single one. In this case, there's 5 of them. You want to make sure you do it for every single one of those CSVs. Turn it into an Excel workbook, and then convert that to a table. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead on our new environment here, number 15. And again, pause and use this as a reference tool. But here on number 15, we're going to go to SharePoint and we're going to open up the location of where we want the new lists to reside. And we're going to say personal. We're going to click on documents and we're going to say new list. Okay. Now, once we've done the new list itself, we're going to go ahead and import that. I'm going to come back up to 3 and 4 here. Oh, well, you hit the new site, 1, 2, documents, then you go up to the gear and hit site contents, and then you go 5, new, and then list. Okay, sorry about that. I can't even read my own notes. All right, so here we're going to select Excel. We're going to say upload. We're going to pick one of these files. We can do one at a time. Okay, and we're going to click open. Now, once we click open, here is one thing that we need to make sure of. We're going to hit open and it's going to ask us to convert right here, customize this file. This is what it's going to ask us, and then hit next. Notice here that it says do not import choice. You have to take this data here that it's going to import and balance it against that screenshot. Remember I told you to take the screenshot of the list? You're going to need to do that to compare, to make sure that when you import, for example, team, well, here, let's use this one. ServiceNow closed, it's a yes, no. Notice there is no yes, no option. I click no, do not import. Notice here I have num impacted. If I found num impacted on my screen here, you know, usually you can find it faster than I can. Here it is right here, num impact, single line of text, single line of text. Now I might, if I was looking at that without this reference guide, I might say, oh, wait a minute, that's a number, but it's not. And again, action, they usually come over as numbers. We want to change it to a date and time. And again, I'm validating against this list. Now, what are these little gears? I usually put a little icon next to a field that I choose not to import. Right now I didn't do it here yet, but this would have a gear on it as well. If I say do not import, for example, archive there, then I have to go back and create the fields that I did not import manually. Okay. Now we're just going to go ahead and create the list. There's going to be a whole bunch of gibbery juicier stuff here. Just delete that and name it. Again, the name needs to be the name that you exported it as. Okay, so if it was TM originally, created as TM now, hit create. Okay, and now we're ready to import into the new tenant, the application. So just go to import here at PowerApps, apps, import Canvas. We're going to click on upload. Then we're going to click on the file itself. Now it's a zip file and it's going to take care of it for us. Once it does that, it's going to come in, it's going to ask us actions that we need to do. And remember, we talked about these actions here. Once you click on the gear, you can change. But this looks good and this looks good. But this, I want to make sure, is going to the right place. So here, I'm going to select the user account. So it says select during import. Okay, select during import. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to tell it where. I'm going to click on my name. I'm going to hit save. That's going to associate it with a new resource. Now, do failures happen when we do PowerApps? Most of the time when we do migrations. In fact, very rarely does it go over with no hitch at all. So let's talk about some of these failures. The first failure we're going to talk about, you're going to get this nasty message here. Once it imports, it's going to give you this message. Okay, meaning that nothing loaded. Okay, here we see a big red mark. That means that the flow did not import. Notice here also we have a red mark. Okay, if we dig into that a little bit, we can see it'll just tell us that it didn't import. And so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the tenant and create the flow. So this is, I'm going to give you 3 options here, 2 or 3 options. So we're going to actually create a flow named TM labor count. Okay. And we know that it's a PowerApps because we documented the flow up top, right? We documented it way up here, right? Wherever that was. Right here, we documented the flow itself. So now we know exactly what the first couple steps are. And remember, when you create a new flow, you have to create at least one action, one trigger and one action. So we're going to pick the trigger right here, which is PowerApp. So we're going to name it the same way. We're going to hit create. Then we're going to add this variable right here, and we're going to hit save, and that should be fine. Now, in PowerApps, we're going to go back to where it says import Canvas app, and when we get to the import package, we're going to say to update, not for new. Now, to create new, so it's update. Now, when you hit update, what will happen is it's going to pop up another menu and say, hey, find the flow that you want to update. Now, we already created this flow, right? Right here. Now, will it appear immediately? It will not. In fact, it's not uncommon to have to close Power Automate, come back in, and see it then. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and update this and create this. So here, we're going to try it again. Okay? We're going to try it again. Rerun it. Instead of creating new, we're going to update. Okay? We're going to hit it, and it still did not work. So we're going to go back into where that flows, and we're going to delete it. We're going to try one other approach, which is exporting the flow and then importing it into the new environment. So we're going to say import the package. We already captured it here, and we're going to hit upload. Okay, we're going to say create as new this time and proceed, and we still get an error. Okay, so when we continue to get this error, we're going to need to remove the flow from the PowerApp. So you're going to want to go to the original PowerApp, go right here where it says PowerApp, and see here I have this PowerApp link right here. Okay, Power Automate, excuse me, link to this flow called TM labor count. Oh, I have the yawns this morning. Sorry about that. You're going to click the three dots here and say remove this app. But important in the yellow here that you notice where the button is. So there's a button here you can't see, but this is the code associated with the button. We have to take off the button. Notice here, I'm going to give you another shot of it. This is where the red X, remove the button, which will remove the code. Okay? Then we're going to try it again. Now, first of all, when we do this and we remove this code, we have to save. We have to save, I think I mentioned it here, right here. Save the app and publish the change. So we're going to need to save the app and publish the change. Remember, inside of PowerApps, you have the ability to restore a PowerApp. So don't worry about it that you're saving it. We can restore it later. It's very easy. It takes a couple minutes to open up. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and try to re-export the app. Now, notice here when we re-export the app, this is our original tenant. Notice here that there are no related items. You can see the screenshot up above. I think it's around number 15 or so. And see here that we want to create this as a new app with no dependencies. Okay? So we want to make sure that when we click on the action that it says create as new, no related items, and then we get a final package resources, did it correctly, get a green check, everything's happy, or it's wonderful. Now, let's go ahead and open up the app. We open up the app, we're going to be challenged for SharePoint credentials, which is typical. But when we start looking, so then we need to go to the data itself. So remember, inside of PowerApps, the little data thing, we had it up above. We're going to click on the data and we're going to see our data. Now, what will be interesting to you, if you hold your mouse over the three dots there, you're going to see that the data set tenant points to the original tenant, but the SharePoint connection points to your username, which makes no sense at all. I know why it did it, because this really shouldn't be in there, but it is. And so we're going to need to delete this entire, the entire connection. So to delete, we click on the three dots and then we hit delete. Now, once that's happened and we reconnect the data sources, I'm sorry, let me see if I'm getting ahead of myself. I am getting ahead of myself. Okay, so we're going to have these errors, right? So we're going to need to go into SharePoint. We're going to hit remove or delete. We're going to delete all the data sources from our tenant. Then we're going to add a new data source, SharePoint, and then we find the lists, and then we add all of them into the new app. Now, here we're going to edit this data just so that we can see if we can see it. We can, but the problem is that we're having a problem seeing things, right? Because when we hit edit, some of this language is going to be messed up. Notice that I have red lines underneath everything. It does not transfer perfect. So you're going to have to troubleshoot your way through these red lines. So as an example, one of the common troubleshooting is that the task does not equal what the field name is. In this example, task name is a column name. When it imported, it gave it field_1. So you're going to see that when we start fixing this and peeling it back, you're going to have to fix a lot of these errors within the environment. Once you get them all done, your app will run just perfect. So, is it worth it to copy an app from another tenant? Nah, I don't know. Sometimes it is, because you get all the designs still. Everything looks the same, which is nice. But if you took good notes when you were creating the first app, sometimes I find it easier, it's faster just to create the app again and go from there. And what I find with that activity is that it tends to make the app better, because I cut out some of the things I know didn't quite work out with the first app. But whatever you want, this is your guide for moving that PowerApp from one tenant to another. Please use this as a reference guide for you as you're kind of going through this experience, so that you can have it. Maybe bookmark it, or add it as a favorite, or subscribe to the channel for new additions.